Theoden, the king of Rohan, and Denethor, the steward of Gondor. Upon his return to Middle-earth as Gandalf the White, the wizard has dealings with these prominent figures, descended from distinguished lines of men. Both are experiencing grief and despair during the War of the Ring. This video will aim to answer why Gandalf was able to successfully pull King Theoden out of darkness and doubt, allowing him to lead his people valiantly before falling in battle, while failing to sway Denethor of Gondor from despair through grief, from despondency at a time when Gondor needed leadership and courage.
They walked down a paved passage, long and empty, and as they went, Gandalf spoke softly to Pippin.
Be careful of your words, Master Peregrine. This is no time for hobbit pertness. Theoden is a kindly old man. Denethor is of another sort, proud and subtle. A man of far greater lineage and power, though he is not called a king.
After arriving in Gondor, Gandalf provides us with an insightful comparison between the king and the steward. Personally, I find it interesting when a being of such authority and power as Gandalf can respect and acknowledge the authority of those some may read as traditionally being beneath a being like Gandalf. The wizard rightfully respects these figures, and this is one of many comparisons between Theoden and Denethor. Tolkien often uses two characters to compare an approach to certain concepts. Saruman and Gandalf can be very easily compared in their approach to accomplishing their task in Middle-earth and the downfall of Sauron. The brothers Faramir and Boromir can be compared in their approach to saving their homeland, their relationship to their father Denethor, and through their experiences with the One Ring. Denethor and Theoden can be compared when we discuss despair and grief. One assumes a king is greater than a steward, but what is a steward? When the office of steward was established, it was a role as advisor and counsellor to a king of Gondor. They would remain within the realm, never leaving to go to war, and were to serve Gondor through their wisdom. When King Eärnur answered the challenge of the Witch King and entered Minas Morgul, he never returned. Fear grew of a kin strife over who would be suitable to become king, and the steward Mardil became the first of the ruling stewards of Gondor. Awaiting a suitable king, the ruling stewards watched over the throne for over 9 centuries. While we may see a steward as being a placeholder for a king, and see Theoden as a true king, Gandalf tells us that Denethor is of far greater lineage and power than the king of Rohan. Denethor descends from a line of stewards who have ruled Gondor for a period longer than the kingdom of Rohan has existed. The line of stewards goes further back than the ruling stewards to arguably the greatest men born into the world itself. Despite being a steward, Denethor is blessed with the wisdom of kings and the gifts as a descendant of Númenor. This isn't to say Rohan is some petty kingdom, that isn't the case, but Gondor is a place where Denethor claims that 10,000 years without a king would not be enough to make a steward a king. It is a symbol of the race of men itself, of its past, its progress, and its nobility. It is an old kingdom made by those who themselves descend from an even older kingdom. Returning to Theoden and Denethor, both feel the weight of ruling their lands, and both at one point experienced a fall through corruption. Theoden is saved from his despair, while Denethor falls further into his until it eventually ends him. The method of their corruption is entirely different, with Theoden becoming subjected to corruption through failing health hastened in his mid-60s through his counsellor Grima Wormtongue. The chief obstacles to an easy conquest of Rohan by Saruman were Theodred and Eomer. They were vigorous men, devoted to the king, and high in his affections, as his only son and his sister's son, and they did all that they could to thwart the influence over him that Grima gained when the king's health began to fail. This occurred early in the year 3014, when Theoden was 66. His malady may thus have been due to natural causes, though the Rohirrim commonly lived till near or beyond their 80th year. But it may well have been induced or increased by subtle poisons administered by Grima. In any case, Theoden's sense of weakness and dependence on Grima was largely due to the cunning and skill of this evil counsellor's suggestions. Saruman the wizard is able to subdue the king through Grima. His health deteriorates as he is constantly told to save his strength and let his counsellor take care of matters. Even after the treachery of Grima is discovered, Theoden speaks of Gandalf and Grima as people who would offer him counsel, the old and the new. Theoden relies on others and trusts in the wisdom of others over making all decisions on his own.
It will go ill with Wormtongue if Gandalf comes upon him, said Theoden. Nonetheless, I miss now both my counsellors, the old and the new. But in this need we have no better choice than to go on, as Gandalf said, to Helm's Gate. Whether Erkenbrand be there or no, is it known how great is the host that comes from the north?
Denethor, by comparison, requires and seeks no counsel. His hall sits almost empty. Even Pippin doesn't notice anyone within it until the bell is rung and servants approach hastily with food. We don't see who opens the doors to Gandalf and Pippin from the inside. Denethor takes counsel with himself. It makes it remarkably more difficult for him to heed the advice of others, or to even trust others who may disagree with his own judgment. With Theoden being more open to the words of Gandalf, Denethor would be less inclined to listen. Gandalf was able to tell the king that he wasn't too old, that he wasn't too weak, and that he had been a victim of poisonous words and intent. Denethor's corruption came through the Palantir, the Seeing Stone, yet he still managed to avoid being cowed by Sauron himself. With Saruman the White being unable to resist the will of Sauron through the Palantir, it speaks volumes of the authority and power held by Denethor. The stones have rightful owners, and the steward has the authority to wield his Seeing Stone. Sauron was only able to do so much to Denethor through the power he held. Yet we can see that Denethor's attitude to the threat of Sauron, that his fall was different to the king of Rohan's. Theoden has a man working for a fallen wizard, speaking poison in his ear, and he suffers the loss of his son and heir, Theodred. Theoden is left lamenting his legacy and failure to be considered worthy of his ancestors. Denethor also loses a son, his favourite son, Boromir, but has the Dark Lord himself attempting to poison his mind. While Theoden fails to resist the corruption of Saruman through Grima, Denethor succeeds in part by withstanding absolute corruption in the form of domination by Sauron. Sauron then changes his approach by leaking certain information to Denethor in a cunning approach to remove hope of Gondor's survival. The steward rejects the lies of Sauron, but falls victim to the truths of Sauron. He believes the One Ring has or will be found by Sauron. It was no lie that a halfling was in Mordor. Denethor is shown the corsairs sailing down the great river, spelling doom for the defenders of Minas Tirith in a great assault. Again, they do arrive, but to aid Gondor. Even if Denethor had been shown the truth, it would arguably have him fearing for his position, as the one leading the ships is the ranger Aragorn, the king that will return to Gondor. To Denethor, he will be supplanted by one he does not deem worthy of being called a king. Denethor can resist Sauron due to his own stubborn independence, but falls to him anyway due to that same independence. He is completely unwilling to seek advice elsewhere or to listen to counsel. It is difficult for him to accept advice from Gandalf, the one he believes has corrupted the mind of his youngest son, Faramir, the wizard who was on a journey with his son Boromir who never returned home, and the one who is out to supplant him from his position by placing a king on the throne of Gondor he does not deem worthy.
Hope on then,
laughed Denethor.
do I not know thee, Mithrandir? Thy hope is to rule in my stead, to stand behind every throne, north, south, or west. I have read thy mind and its policies. Do I not know that you commanded this halfling here to keep silence? That you brought him hither to be a spy within my very chamber? And yet in our speech together I have learned the names and purpose of all thy companions. So, with the left hand thou wouldst use me for a little while as a shield against Mordor, and with the right bring up this ranger from the north to supplant me.
The emptiness of Denethor's hall is representative of his autonomy, his greatness and strength, and his weakness leading to his downfall. Denethor learns of the One Ring without even being told about it, because despite grief, he is still knowledgeable and wise. He comes to his own conclusions, and sees the actions of Gandalf as folly, removing hope of Gondor's great legacy remaining intact. We don't know exactly what Theoden was told about the One Ring before he fell on the fields of the Pelennor, but there's no indication he had worked things out with the keen insight of Denethor, the steward, demonstrating his shrewd wisdom and perception in this great matter. The despair of each character is one of the most important reasons why Gandalf is unable to save Denethor. As Gandalf, Legolas, Gimli and Aragorn enter Medusel and Rohan, it is dark within. Gandalf delivers Theoden from this darkness, with the king having been almost reserved in believing he could never be helped. Gandalf leads him outside into the light. Hope lingers behind despair. The Hall of Denethor is even more unwelcoming, despite Gandalf never being halted when attempting to enter it. It is cold, distant and unmoving. These halls match the mood of their lords. Denethor sits in a cold room bereft of hope. He doesn't want help, as he has already reached the conclusion that nothing can be done. When we reach this Lord of Men, he is already too far gone. He answers only to pride and valiant deeds, with Pippin stirring some positive response from him. Denethor delights in the Hobbit having the gall to look him in the eye, and to not shy away from his true intentions. He respects the pride that Pippin carries with him, and how he represents his people. The steward feels comfortable in this situation, and does not feel at all threatened by the halfling. His attitude changes with the presence of Gandalf, seemingly feeling directly threatened by him, and he stands against him. Though all the signs forebode that the doom of Gondor is drawing nigh, less now to me is that darkness than my own darkness. With no trust existing, no hope can be kindled by Gandalf. The words I quoted tell me that Denethor is lost to despair. It is despair felt by a man of greater lineage and power than King Theoden. Gandalf was powerless, as Denethor had already started building his funeral pyre within his own mind.